Thank you for staying with Your World. My name is Gladys Gachanja. Now, the just concluded COP26 UN Climate Conference put into perspective the importance of each and every country taking up climate action to mitigate the effects of global warming. Now, halting and reversing forest loss was one of the commitments made at the climate conference. Kenya is in tow with this commitment, and with the help of its partners is enabling the youth to help replenish our forest cover and in turn lend to the green economy. Now, I have gentlemen with me in studio to help us understand how this is happening. We are joined by, first of all, Walid Badawi, who is the UNDP resident representative to Kenya. Thank you for coming through. We have Roy Sasaka Telewa, who is the CEO, National Youth Council, and of course, Geoffrey Wanyama, who is the CEO, Farm Forestry Smallholders Producer Association of Kenya. Gentlemen, thank you for being part of this very pertinent conversation. So, tree growing and its greater value, a pertinent conversation again, as I mentioned, after the fact that we had a successful, almost successful, depending on where you're looking at it, COP26 climate change conference, and halting that reversing even the loss of forest cover was one of the commitments. Let me start with Geoffrey. How are we doing as a country, do you think?
Well, thank you very much, Gladys, for that question. I think as a country, and I'm happy you have said tree growing, not tree planting.
Yes.
Because most of the time we talk about tree planting, which to me is different from tree growing.
How is it different?
The difference is if you just plant a tree, it means you are not looking after it. I mean, and if you grow it, then you will look after it. So I'll say as a country, we haven't been able to meet the minimum forest cover as required by the UN, which is about 10%. I think currently we are doing 6.9, close to 7, and that figure is still disputed. Some people say it is, it's way below that. And I think the government has also been, putting in efforts to support tree growing across the country. Now farm forestry is a devolved function, so we are also hoping that the counties will also play a big role in terms of supporting tree growing. And I think we also have the tree planting campaign, which is also being supported by partners, UNDP and other partners. And I think one of the things that, of course, we are facing as a country at the moment is we even don't have enough seedlings to support the process. 2 years ago, the Kenya government was looking around for tree seedlings from farmers, because I think they had exhausted what they have in their nurseries. So the tree seedling is a challenge. And also, if you look at the tree nursery sector, for example, we have so many informal operators. It's not organized. It's a huge sector of the economy that is not, organized like other sectors. And of course, we know as a country we are facing a serious drought at the moment.
Yes.
Which is also related, of course, to the way we have treated our our environment. And we hope that our efforts in trying to reverse not just deforestation but climate degradation will also play a big role in terms of even supporting the food security efforts in terms of creating green jobs. And like I said, the sector, for example, the tree nursery sector is not organized. So one of the things that we hope that we need to do, as a country, is to organize the many players in the sector, starting with there are so many roadside tree nurseries. If you drive across the country, there are so many of them. And the question that comes to our mind is, who is supporting them to do that work?
Allow me to stop you at that point, because we'll get to delve further into that and how we can enable that sector. Let's look at first the problem before we get to the solution. And at this point, I'd like to hear from Roy. What has led to the expansive loss of forest cover in this country, so that we know how to now solve or bridge the gap?
When you look at it, Gladys, I would want to approach it from a point of what is our value system? What is it that we hold so dear? And what is it that has kept changing as a nation and across the globe, that we forget some of the most important critical things? When I was growing up, when I was young, tree planting was like in our DNA, where in a primary school, you wake up one day, you plant trees the entire day. Okay, about growing, I think that was the challenge. But in terms of planting, we used to plant trees. So along the way, I think we started forgetting the things that are very critical. We looked at growing trees as ceremonic, where when you're having an event, we want the chief guest to plant the tree, and not all of us to plant the trees. So along the way, we miss the bigger picture, why we need to grow the trees. So I think, when you look at now what is happening, the environment catching up with us. Now is when we realize, we wake up and we realize, come on, when did the rain start beating us? Where did we leave it? And that informs why we are even now as a country, as a continent, especially in Kenya, aligning our policies in realization on what has changed. Like the Kenya Youth Development Policy. One of the major anchors of Kenya Youth Development Policy is, how do we look at the climate action? And something meaningful from the policy, and I'm happy that I'm here with sharing a platform with Walid, is how do we as a country have a coordinated approach towards climate action? So we believe, we understand as government, as young people, we cannot do it alone. We need the UN, we need the private sector, we need all of us to have a coordinated approach towards climate action for us to realize it. So I believe it's just erosion of our values a long time, forgetting what is important to us as people. And this is a call-up action to us that we need to rethink the model, because if we don't do it now, we are actually stealing from the future generation their life.
The late Professor Wangari Maathai actually
exactly.
emphasized
I need to
to
acknowledge that.
Yes. All right. So Wally, what Roy says is not unique to Kenya. It's the world over. Having worked in different markets in this country, what have you seen is the greatest pitfall?
Thanks, Gladys, and thanks for having us on your program. I think if you look at economies around the world, they rely very heavily on timber for manufacturing, for construction. Kenya's Big Four agenda very much relies on the forests, and so it's a question of creating the economic growth while at the same time living within planetary boundaries. And it's for that reason that in 2020 our Global Human Development Report, which is our flagship product that drives global development conversations around pertinent development topics. And you may recall back in 1990 when we produced the first report, it shifted the global conversation from measuring development from a GDP perspective to the Human Development Index, which brought in health, education, and income as a composite indicator. This 2020 report, which was our 30th anniversary publication, the theme is the next frontier, human development and the Anthropocene. And basically what the report argues, and based on global analysis, is that for the first time in history, human beings are now digging their own graves effectively because of the fact that we are living beyond our planetary boundaries. Now the report makes a number of recommendations and policy suggestions that policymakers around the world would internalize and ground within nationally appropriate solutions. But at its core, it's advocating for equity, innovation, and environmental stewardship as key principles that societies must embrace if we are to find that balance between economic growth and living within our planetary bounds. And actually, for the first time, and this is quite interesting in this Human Development Report, and I certainly encourage people interested in it to look at, for the first time, we've introduced something called the Planetary Pressures Adjusted Human Development Index, which actually looks at countries' carbon dioxide emissions, but also materials waste production, coupled with the traditional three metrics of education, health, and income. And what the report has found is that from the high human development countries, if you introduce the Planetary Pressures Adjusted Index, 50 of those countries drop out, which is basically saying that there is no country that is actually growing, developing, producing development dividends without exerting an undue pressure on the environment.
Very wanting. Those statistics are very wanting, and clearly we all need to do something on our part to ensure we can reverse that trajectory. So at this point, I have heard you talk a lot about the economy and the connection with the forestry sector. Geoffrey, what is that correlation between the two?
Yeah, I think I want to emphasize the point that Wali has mentioned. For example, as a country, we are using a lot of wood-related products from the forest. And I mentioned about the issue of the food security, which is very, very paramount. But I think most importantly is the fact that as an economy, as a growing economy, we are relying a lot on wood products, and we are importing even from Malawi, as far as Malawi, South Africa, and even China. And Kenya is a wood deficit country. I think at the moment the statistics puts the figure at around 14 million cubic meters. So that is the gap. And if you look at our production, we are not anywhere near meeting that demand. So we, as an economy, we are relying a lot on forestry. Even the water we are drinking, we've been talking about conserving the Mau, conserving the 5 water towers. And that is very, very, very key. And the other thing that I also want to mention is that I think at the moment we are also looking at forestry in terms of supporting the nutrition of our people. We are now producing a lot of avocado for export. We are exporting to China. We have farmers who are doing macadamia nuts. I mean, it is huge. We are really relying on forestry to support our economy. So it is very, very key. And one thing that you also have to realize is that if anything happens to our forestry sector, then I think the impact is huge, and it spills even to other sectors as well.
Okay. Yeah. Now, a green economy is what is considered to be the vehicle that will able to breathe life back to the forestry sector. Roy, what exactly is the green economy? And what or how is it going to impact on what we're trying to achieve as a country?
Allow me to address that through a project we are running with UNDP called GREAP. Green economy is where we are looking at the entire value chain of green processes. And we are looking at it and saying, what are the opportunities available? It is not just about conservation. I think for a very long time, the narrative about climate action was about conservation. But when you look beyond it, we are looking at green economy in terms of what are, beyond conservation, what are the opportunities available in it? And these opportunities available in them, Gladys, are actually opportunities for even livelihoods. How do we create green jobs? And that informs one of our key major projects we are doing with UNDP, where we are through a project called GREAP, where we are saying beyond conservation, we need to create green jobs where young people, beyond growing trees, they can also get livelihoods out of it. And you're looking at the entire value chain of the green processes, where, as Wanyama has said, we grow trees We are looking at beyond growing just trees. How do we grow food trees, and how do we also get commercial value out of that process, the entire process? So we are saying yes, there's a lot of opportunities in the green economy, and we are saying these opportunities are actually the greatest people to leverage on these green opportunities are the young people.
Why?
Because when you look at it, Gladys, 75% of young people of our population is young people, and this is the demographic that is actually, we are the demographic that are battling unemployment and all those challenges that are associated with it. So we are saying, can we explore opportunities beyond the traditional available opportunities? And green economy is one of it for us as young people. Yeah.
Now, Wale, definitely, again, this is not unique to us as a country, but the role of the youth has been said over and over again, including at the COP26, at the 7th Devolution Conference that just ended, that their role in conserving the environment is very critical. How can governments of the day ensure that they actually enable this population?
Thanks, Gladys. I mean, for me, the issue of youth in a country, as my brother Roy just said, 75% of the population is below the age of 35. It is crucial that all institutions, be they government, be they the private sector, be they development partners, actually ensure that they put youth not just at the center and objective of their activities, that's a must, but they also have to put youth at the decision-making table as they make policy choices, programmatic choices that concern youth, not just in environment, across the spectrum of the Sustainable Development Goals. And it's for that reason, Gladys, that for us as UNDP Kenya, we spearheaded an initiative whereby we've established something called the Youth Sounding Board for UNDP Kenya. It's a multi-stakeholder platform. My brother Roy here is a member of our Youth Sounding Board, as are 23 other youth leaders selected based on demographic, substantive profiles. We're honored to have Kas Nadia Abdallah of the Ministry of Innovation, ICT and Youth Affairs co-chair the Youth Sounding Board. And we've made a choice as UNDP that nothing for youth without youth. So we've created not just a seat at the table for youth in our decision making, we've given them an entire table. So the Youth Sounding Board becomes a very systemic way of ensuring that nothing for youth without youth. And let me say, this program, GREAP, the Green Economy Youth Activation Program, which is one of many programs that are about environmental conservation, but also looking at the nexus between conservation and livelihoods that UNDP is implementing. This was the first product, let me say, of the UNDP Kenya Youth Sounding Board. We had an opportunity presented by the COVID-19 pandemic as a development institution to look at what are the pathways that countries can take to recover from the pandemic. And as UNDP, we've looked at basically 4 opportunity areas. The green economy is clearly one, and green recovery, and Roy has spoken to how do you create livelihoods in the sector, social protection, governance and agency of young people in countries, and digital disruption. Those are 4 streams that we see are emerging opportunity areas to address building forward better. So the GREAP was a product that actually brought the green economy, it brought the youth agency, and it brought the digital disruption as well into the equation by designing a program that was informed by the Youth Sounding Board. So this is one project that we're very happy to be implementing right now that is creating employment, that is creating livelihoods, that is addressing that issue where we have such an underrepresentation of young people in the agroforestry value chain.
And Geoffrey, you represent the Farm Forestry Smallholders Producers Association of Kenya, and you're also working closely with the UNDP. How is this coming to ensure that we enable our youth?
Thank you, Gladys. I think one thing that we are doing is to build the entrepreneurial capacity of the youth, because we want them to look at, for example, if they are engaged in tree nursery, we want them to look at that as a business. And so one of the things that we are doing is to help them to develop business plans for for what they are doing. And we're also linking them to other service providers, for example, to support them with the extension in terms of building their capacity around tree nursery practices. We are also linking them to markets where they can sell their products. But most importantly, we are also trying to organize them, because like I said, this is a sector that has not been organized, and it's employing a lot of people. And Gladys, you will be surprised if you know, for example, if you are told how much is coming out of the tree nurseries across the countries. Billions. It's billions of money. And so that is a source of employment, like Roy said. And so the GREA project is basically to help the youth to be organized, and also to have a platform where they can be able to voice their issues. So because that comes with a lot of organization. You cannot form a strong, for example, a strong voice if you are alone. But if you are in a group, then you can be able even to hold other leaders to account, to support whatever they are doing, to support their initiatives. So that is one of the things that we are doing under GREA project.
Okay, now we take a short break here on Your World. When we return, Roy, these youth we talk about need to be attracted to have the buy-in to what we're talking about today. So how are you going about it? We'll find out right after the short break. Stay with us. Thank you for staying with Your World. My name is Gladys Gachanja. We are talking about tree growing and its greater value. Still with a gentleman with me in studio, but before we get back to that pertinent conversation, let's take a look at the other world. Now, South Africa's National Assembly rejects a bill proposing a constitutional amendment to allow for the expropriation of land without compensation, part of reforms to correct disparities arising from centuries of colonialism followed by apartheid. Now, the proposed bill to change the constitution failed to gather a two-thirds majority required, with 204 lawmakers voting in favor and 145 against.
Bill falls within the ambit of Section 24, subsection 2 of the Constitution. A supporting vote of two-thirds of the members of the Assembly is therefore needed.
Online, the Democratic Alliance has 48 members. Present in the House, we have 31 members, giving us a total of 79 members voting against the Constitutional Amendment 18.
We are voting against the bill, the reactionary bill that was smuggled wrongly and done wrongly by the reactionary and selling out ANC. We are voting against the bill.
There were no abstentions. 145 members voted against, and 204 members voted in support of the bill. As the required majority has not been obtained, in terms of Section 74, subsection 2 of the Constitution, the bill will not be read a second time.
So back to our conversation. My gentleman in studio today, Roy Sasaka Telewe, who is the CEO, National Youth Council, Geoffrey Wanyama, CEO, Farm Forestry Smallholders Producer Association of Kenya, and of course, Walid Badawi, who is a UNDP resident representative in Kenya. And before we went to break, I think we had mentioned the importance the youth and the role they play in environmental conservation, in this case, tree growing. But how do we get the buy-in to this? Because we're talking about a generation that perhaps has, ideas of how they can eke a living, and you're asking them to be part of this, cause.
Thank you so much, Gladys. I believe that our relationship with nature is is unique, and it's fulfilling in its own way. But something that we need to bring out is a constant reminder. You know, sometimes we forget how to experience and bond and interact with nature. And that calls for us as a population, as a country, to always constantly reminding ourselves. And that involves creating a lot of awareness. You know, they normally say that when you don't have enough information, you're not able to be, you're not empowered. So that calls for a lot of awareness, a lot of sensitizations, a lot of capacity building of our young people, and this will encourage a lot of bonding with the nature. And I believe that is what we are doing as National Youth Council, as government, all the way from the policies we are putting in place with a coordinated approach with our partners. It's a discussion that is cutting across, not only in Kenya, but across the continent, where we are saying, let's take a moment, let's reflect. What is our interaction? What is our connection with the nature? What is it that we are not doing? And what is it that we need to do as a population? So I believe, Gladys, we need to do more, and we are doing that already. A lot of sensitization, a lot of capacity building, a lot of sharing information, and creating more working groups talking about it and engaging in it. And of course, nature is beautiful. Once your conscience is recalled to action, then you are definitely going to do it. And that informs why when you look at the co-creation, even the program Walid is mentioning about CREAP, there is a major component of the youth activation. And there is a major component about creating awareness and sensitization. And that also informs why we are all here in this panel, to make sure that we engage our fellow young people across the country and tell them that this is a call to action for all of us. Beyond policies, the good policies that we have, this is a call to action, that let's wake up as young people. We have the energy, we have the goodwill, we have the strategic partners. Why can't we make sure that we build the environment that we are able to enjoy living in it, and also live as a present to the, not a present, as a, I don't know the right word, Wally, to use, but living something for the generation that will come after us.
Okay, so Geoffrey, you are very passionate about tree growing as a business. Perhaps this is what we need to expound on, so that the youth understand the value of walking into this kind of business, so to speak.
Yeah, I think Gladys, Roy forgot to mention that, you know, we are dealing with, this is a category of population that keeps on saying that atupangwingwi. I think that's the phrase they use. So I think you have to make it to be attractive, as he says. And one of the things, you know, of course, if you tell them that there's money in it, then they will go for it. And there is money, and there's money, of course, yeah. There's money. I think there are so many cases that have demonstrated that actually there is money.
What are the sources of income? I think that's what we need to be very practical about, so that they understand.
You mean sources of income for
through the forestry sector?
Yeah, I think one way, I know, you know, forest sector is also a very risk sector. Yeah. Because I think at the moment there are no banks that are giving loans to farmers or to people to engage in forestry activities because of the risks involved. So one way of trying to make sure that we de-risk the sector, of course, is to work closely with that's why Walid is here, our partners, because de-risking means so many things. The government has also to come in and you know, give that assurance that we will support you, we will give you collateral to engage in this business. Kenya Forest Service, for example, is coming up with an innovative fund, which they are calling Forest Conservation Fund. And it is, you know, it has been an initiative of other partners to support forestry, and we hope that that even young people can get loans from that fund if it becomes operational. They can get loans from there to engage in forestry activities, because otherwise these other banks are not supporting that venture. And like I said, we also have to support the entrepreneurial skills. Simple things like record keeping. How much is a nursery producing in 1 year? They need to have that data. That's the data that you can work with it in a bank and convince the bank to give you money. So capacity development, to me, it cuts across. And we hope that at the end, if they have a business plan, if they can demonstrate a business case of the activities that they are engaged in, then there will be money coming in to support, not just from banks, but even from other investors as well.
Yeah. Now, Walid, let's now put into perspective. Geoffrey mentioned markets that they put them, they connect these youth with so that they ensure that they actually make a living out of. What is that market and how is it lucrative?
It's a huge market, actually. I mean, to quantify it, I think we'll let the experts do it. But let me say that the creation of those markets is actually also linked to global realities. And you started off the show with COP26 and the outcomes from Glasgow and the commitments made by world leaders to end deforestation, which Kenya, and under the leadership of President Kenyatta, spearheaded as well and was a major voice on that platform. If you look at basically the Human Development Report, which I mentioned earlier, it talks about 3 areas of change that we need to bring in. One is invest in nature-based solutions. So the GRIAP, the program that we're talking about, reforestation as a nature-based solution, is exactly what nature-based solutions are. The second one is looking at mindset shifts. And it's not just about awareness. It's awareness for a purpose of changing behaviors. So how do you create the mindset shift? And COVID-19, wearing masks, all of us in a day's notice shows that we can change mindsets that perhaps have for a long time not necessarily been adjusted. And the third one is incentives. Now, to create the market, you need to de-risk, as Geoffrey said, but you also need to create incentives for those young people to come into that sector. How do you do that? If we look at one of the very contentious issues in Glasgow was fossil fuel subsidies, where in the final document it was watered down from phase out to phase down. As UNDP, and you may have seen, and we've aired it on your program, Frankie the Dino, that is alerting and issuing a clarion call to humanity that we're digging our own graves because of $423 billion of investment is going towards fossil fuel subsidies. How do we redirect that investment that is going to destroy our planet to de-risk nature-based solutions? Those are some of the things that Glasgow, and now with the outcomes of Glasgow, we're working as UNDP with our national partners to localize here in Kenya. I think a big part of the commitments made in Glasgow is going to result in financial resources that will come from the call by countries to reach the 100 billion a year investment in adaptation, which is all about nature-based solutions, by the way. And those will become sources of funding available to countries to actually de-risk and create those markets. In the meantime, we have important targets to meet. Kenya has set an ambitious target to reach the 10% tree cover by next year. And credit to the government to have accelerated that from 2030 to 2022. Now, it is a marathon, and Kenya is known for its marathoners, so I'm sure we're going to reach that target. But it does require us to come together. And let me say, just the 10 days after Glasgow, what did Kenya do? It hosted its devolution conference with the theme of climate action. And that, I think, is the first country globally to actually, on the heels of Glasgow, to actually take the policy choice of had made that policy choice earlier, but the coincidence of time coming just 10 days after Glasgow was a very, very meaningful signal by the government at both national and county levels to make climate action a critical priority for itself. And that's where we need to take Glasgow, take it down to the national level, and take it down now to the county level, because that de-risking, the incentives that will be created for young people are in counties, and therefore this is what Kenya is actually doing, and I really want to applaud them for it.
Okay, now, Roy, financing climate action is actually what will give sustenance to what we're talking about today. Coming from that devolution conference, I think a couple of commitments were made. So how is the trickle-down effect going to look like so that we ensure what we're talking about is a reality on the ground?
From where I sit is that, this is what we always push for, and acknowledging some of the stakeholders in this conversation. Once you underscore the stakeholders in this conversation, then you realize that the commitments, the stakeholders are going to take commitments seriously and act on them. And one of the critical stakeholders, that is the Ministry of Environment. And we were supposed, even the PS Environment was to join us, Dr. Chris. I think we notified him a bit late. But what I'm trying to say is that we need all the stakeholders on the table. Ministry of Environment is part of this discussion and part of this partnership. Kenya Forest Service is part of this discussion and is part of this initiative. So when we look at now making the commitments go beyond not just commitments, but they are actualized. And that is the discussion that we are having right now. How do we actualize the commitments? And we are not just discussing how do we actualize, but we are actually actualizing in terms of creating the fund, in terms of how do we bring young people on the table, on the decision-making table? How do we make sure that we make these entrepreneurial, how do we bring young people to start looking at these, not just as a concept, but also in terms of entrepreneurship. So I believe that all the right stakeholders are on the board, Gladys, and that we are actually in the process of implementing the commitments already in board. And what we are focusing on majorly is how do we make sure that the sustainability of this advocacy does not just end with now. And that's why we're bringing in the young people at the center of this conversation. And you're bringing women in this conversation, and also people living with disabilities at the same, so that we make sure that beyond the commitments, we have sustainability of the discussion going forward.
Now, Geoffrey, again, you are the tree-growing business expert here. Perhaps, as Badawi said, tell us the business opportunities in your space.
Oh, I think there are so many. I mean, you have a whole range of opportunities in the space. And I think Walid mentioned one thing, that you look at the Big Four agenda, the manufacturing. If you look at, I don't know if there are studies out there that have been done to try to know how much timber we are consuming. For example, in a year, it's a lot. So many people, like now when it's raining, so many people are looking for seedlings to plant. There are so many opportunities out there.
When you say many people are looking for seedlings to plant,
yes,
who is your primary market when it comes to these nurseries?
I mean, before even I mentioned about the other people that are looking, I mean, other farmers who are looking for these seedlings to buy, I want to mention one thing here, that the government is also buying seedlings to plant. And to me, one way of even supporting these young people is also to assure them that there will be a market for that.
Yes.
How do we do that? We all have to come together. And a good example, I'll give you a very practical example. If you look at what is happening in counties, now we have counties which are allocating money even to their wards to support tree planting activities. If there was a way that, they could insist that we have to get seedlings from, for example, from youth nurseries or from nurseries which are being operated by young people, that would be a huge difference. Then they can buy those seedlings from the young people. Oh, that's one. Then of course, the other thing that I want to mention is that as a country, we are looking at manufacturing a sector to grow. And even the government is doing a lot, because we want to, in 2030, we want to be at another level as Kenya. All that means that we have to rely on resources, forest resources for construction, for all sorts of work. That's an opportunity. that is a market, definitely. There is also a carbon market. I don't want to talk about that because that's another discussion. But in terms of opportunities, they are huge. And lastly, I also want to mention the issue of even fruit trees, which can be planted for multiple purposes, for fruits, for firewood, for timber, and I think people keep on saying that the next big thing is going to be avocado, because people are eating lots of avocado.
Oh, avocado is big. We love it.
Yes.
Yes.
I know.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that to me is a big opportunity that we can encourage our young people to, to invest in.
Yes.
And in terms of the policy, I know, Gladys, when you were growing up, I think you wouldn't go for forestry, for example, because they were saying if you study forestry at university level, you don't get employment because the government is retrenching foresters. That was then, about 20 years ago. Right now, we have a shortage of foresters across. If you go to counties and try to do a census of how many foresters they have, you'll be surprised. Some counties have just one forester. Others don't have even, that capacity. So I think in terms of policy, we also need to see how we are also going to support the counties. Of course, I know UNDP is also supporting devolution.
Yeah.
How are we going to support these counties? Because if you're talking about advisory support, extension support at farmer level, then that has to be done by the county government. It should be the work of the county government, even for sustainability. And we can now link this youth to those services at their level. Yeah.
What lead?
Yes, I'd love to come in on that one, Gladys. And actually, we're implementing a number of programs with the Ministry of Environment and Forestry, very much addressing...
Waleed, sorry, I have to stop you. I'm being told your mic has an issue. Let them sort it out for a moment. But let's hear from Roy. In as far as also bringing in the youth, technological innovations have been pointed out as a key factor in driving the forest conservation agenda. How are you leveraging on technology innovations?
Gladys, we want to say that technology is the enabler. It's an enabler. So in any process that we are having, we have to see what is the level of adoption of technology, because it actually enables processes. And when you listen to what Wamala is presenting, you realize that actually what he's presenting are gaps, some of the gaps that technology will fit in. He mentioned the issues of mapping tree seedlings across the country. That is actually a component where technology is being, and KFS are doing a good job. They are actually coming up with a system that will be able to map up all these tree seedlings across the country and link them up to UNDP, National Youth Council, so that it's an entire coordinated ecosystem in delivering the climate action. So when you look at it majorly, beyond what we are doing is that technology is a major enabler, and that is also one of the ways on attracting young people lucratively to join, because young people are agile, they're creative, they're innovative, and they're actually the ones driving the technology field. So the moment you bring in the technology, then you're able to leverage on the technology to achieve the agenda that we are pushing for. And as you had mentioned, what is it that we are doing to make sure that these commitments are actually delivered? One of it is to make sure that beyond mapping up of the stakeholders is also being able to identify and say, these stakeholders coming on board will be able to deliver this. National Youth Council coming on board will be able to do this in the entire ecosystem, so that at the end of the day, we are all delivering as one, not segmented, where we further have gaps. And then also, just to conclude, in terms of opportunities, when you hear Omalo talking, there's a huge opportunities, especially for the young people. And for me as a young person, I'm looking at it in the entire value chain. I'm even going further and imagining that once we have these great forests that we are bringing on board, why can't we have even bee farming and so that it is actually is a symbiosis relationship as well. And you look at it, it's opening the entire value chain and opportunities for the young people.
Okay, apologies for that, Badawi, but you were mentioning also about the great opportunities for the youth in the same, and of course you can chime in on the impact of technology.
Absolutely. So we've been implementing, together with the Ministry of Environment and Forestry, a program called the Reducing Emissions from Deforestation and Forest Degradation, the readiness phase of that, which basically is an intervention that ensures that Kenya will be able to tap into much bigger forest finance internationally. And there are some foundational interventions that we've implemented, reviewing the national forest policy of the country, establishing a RED Plus strategy and investment plan to ensure that the country is able to exceed and meet its 10% cover. But as part of that, we've also supported counties. And two, Elgeyo Marakwet and Nyeri County, have both established forest policies that exactly do what Geoffrey is saying, to cascade down the kind of enabling environment for young people and other private sector and other stakeholders to come into that value chain that also Roy spoke of. And we've also worked with the Council of Governors within the RED Plus to establish a model forest policy to be generalized and adapted across every single county in the country. And so having the enabling policy environment is so crucial. And that's happening as we speak. Now, technology and innovation I also spoke about earlier. This week, Kenya is hosting its Kenya Innovation Week. I was just there over the last couple of days. And to see the brilliance of the young, brilliant minds here in Kenya, UNDP has what we call the Accelerator Lab, which is a development offer that is testing different hypotheses and sourcing local innovations to address development challenges. And the challenge that we're looking at here in Kenya is youth unemployment across sectors. Now, the Kenya Innovation Week, I was there, as I said, the last couple of days, and to just see some of the innovations that are on the market already, things that are looking at the circular economy. How do you take waste and convert it to energy, for example? We have supported Motobricks, a producer of briquettes that collect waste from Madare to actually produce waste. So many other innovations that are looking at water hyacinth and madenge to transform that into building materials, to create alternatives for chopping down timber and taking down our forests. So all of these are other opportunities that are in the value chain, but that we're seeing a huge uptake of innovations. What is needed now is to link the finance, because that is the challenge. And when you talk to those innovators and you say, what is your challenge? They will say, well, I'm a scientist. I don't have the business acumen to be able to take my idea, convert it into a viable, marketable, bankable product that will then ensure that the finance comes in. And that's why GRIAP becomes a investment to de-risk and to provide, and that's what we are doing through our support to 1,700 associations and youth entrepreneurs that are eager and are in the nurseries and tree growing business. To de-risk them, and we're working with FFSPAC and Geoffrey's association. But we also supported the Kenya Commercial Forestry Conference, which took place 2 weeks ago. And we brought 15 young Kenyans to learn, network, connect with the sector that are being supported under GRIAP. And together with the Kenya Climate Innovation Center, now we're supporting 40 startups and scale-ups to actually provide them with additional support to create viable businesses. Now, what is going to be critical after that is that all of these small, medium, micro enterprises that emerge get formalized. They have to register. They have to be part of a national registration database, which we are supporting also as UNDP with the Micro Small Enterprise Authority, to automate the whole process and make it easier for all of the small and micro enterprises to actually be registered.
Okay. All right, I hear you, gentlemen, and clearly we have a good plan in our hands. And now, sustainability of what has been tabled here today is what will determine how soon we reap the benefits of what we've spoken about. So, what are the key fundamentals needed to put in place to ensure, or need to be put in place to ensure we achieve the required forest cover? Let me start with Geoffrey.
Thank you, Gladys. I think one is what Waldi has just mentioned, policy. We need to have the conducive policy environment, not just at the national level, but even at the county level as well. And to me, the other thing is, of course, looking at forestry as a livelihood. I mean, as one of the things that is supporting us. So we all have, we have a responsibility to look after the forestry because of the benefit that we are deriving in from forestry. Then I think the other thing that we also need to do is, of course, it's the policies that create incentives, but we also have to just come out as a country and make sure that we also support, we give our farmers the right incentives. I just want to mention one thing, Gladys, that in this country, in the last 4 years, the only source of forest that we have been, forest product that we have been getting internally is coming from farms because of the logging ban, which has been in place since 2018, I think. So, and that means that our farmers have been producing around 60% of our timber needs. They have been, producing that. So we also have to support them. And the other thing is, the last thing that we also need to do is, now many farmers are organized into groups and even youth people. And the good thing with groups, it's easier even to reach out to them, to train them, and also to support them than when you are dealing with an individual farmer. So we also need to support these associations. We need to build their capacity. And we also have to make sure that they are legally recognized, they are legally registered, because you cannot deal with a group which is not, registered. It's not legally there. But to me, from policy point of view, I think that is what we need to do as a country as we move forward.
Roy?
Gladys, for me, is that we do all these at the same time. We develop the policies we are doing, and also we action, because and that's what we are doing actually. We are, as we are reviewing our policies to make sure that we have the right framework, we also action. And mine is just to call all of us as people to action. Let's make our hands dirty. Let's grow those trees. Let's open up those opportunities for my fellow young people. Let's make sure that this is a cool thing to do, to be involved in. And beyond that, we're also having regional conversation. So it's not just only in Kenya. Case in point is the Youth Connect in Accra last month, where we're just saying, as we do this, because yes, Kenya could be doing so much in terms of climate action. Then you leave another country behind. Then you realize that the effects of that country are also coming to affect you as Kenya, because we are not in isolation. So let's have more peer review. Let's push for this advocacy, and let's make sure that we are actually having a relationship with nature.
Walid?
I would summarize it into 5 Ps, if I may, and I spoke about this at the Devolution Conference. One, I would say, is power, and by power I mean leadership. We need enlightened leadership that actually looks at nature-based solutions as a policy directive at all levels, from the national level, county level, but everyone in society is a leader. We need everybody to sing that song, and it's great to see the media picking up the topic and talking about it. This is the first piece. Second one is policy, and I think my colleagues here have talked about, and Kenya has done very well on the policy agenda. There's a robust policy framework. We need to now take it down much more robustly at the county level where it really matters. The third P is programs. And we need to have appropriate programs that are incentivizing de-risking the kind of engagement of young people in the sector. And I've talked about GRIAP, and we've spoken about that. Similar programs of that nature. 4 is partnerships, because none of us, as has been said, will be able to do this alone, but partnerships that are actually attracting the international finance that globally countries that are responsible for climate change, not Kenya, because it has not contributed to the carbon emissions that the world is seeing, to actually own up. Partnerships is key. And the fifth P is to pray that it happens.
Good one, good one. Love it. Walid Badao, UNDP resident representative to Kenya, Geoffrey Wanyama, CEO, Farm Forestry Smallholders Producer Association of Kenya, and of course, Roy Sasaka Telewa, who is the CEO, National Youth Council. That was an enriching conversation, and I think the youth are in the right hands going forward, even as they also lend a hand in environmental conservation. Gentlemen, asanteni. Well, at that point, we actually end this session of Your World. Thank you for engaging with us, and we wish you a lovely rest of this Wednesday.